Warning, this video will contain One Punch Man spoilers. With the ultra hype fight of Saitama vs. Garou imminent in the One Punch Man manga, and the changes between the One Punch Man manga and the webcomic, specifically the introduction of God, the monster god, and so many references to him and imagery of him in the manga, there's a very real chance that Garou may fuse with God at some point in this chapter in the battle with Saitama. And so joining me today to talk about this topic is the channel Plot Armor with 420,000 subscribers. They also talk about One Punch Man as well as other anime like Attack on Titan and Demon Slayer. Please welcome Plot Armor. With the ultra hype fight that's coming up, Garou vs. Saitama, we've seen God consistently throughout the manga. Not in the webcomic, just the manga. He was in the webcomic just very briefly for the image with Homeless Emperor, but here in the actual One Punch Man manga, God is shown time and time and time again. We just saw him through Blast's black hole with a variety of other heroes or villains. Apparently there's some universal galactic war against God going on out there. And we've also seen God granting power to more than just Homeless Emperor. He also granted power to Psychos. He tried to grant power to Saitama. And so with this big ultra hype battle that's coming up, Garou versus Saitama, and Garou seemingly half monster, half human now, more control over himself, and continually getting stronger, we know at this stage of the game that he's not strong enough to beat Saitama. So what I want to bring here today is the possibility of God granting Garou power. Will Garou, who isn't losing to anyone right now, get so frustrated in the battle with Saitama that he will make a deal with God and transform or fuse with God in a sense to create this big demonic form? So, spoilers for the One Punch Man webcomic, Garou does get very frustrated in his battle with Saitama and he grows into this like big gargoyle thing. He's just gigantic. And I'm wondering, since Murata is changing the story slightly, is he going to use all these references of God and God's resurrection, which we continually see in the manga, in order to rewrite the story and have God be the one granting Garou the power to turn into that big gargoyle demon thing that we saw in the webcomic?
I'm at a crossroads here, because I do think that it makes sense narratively to have that be how Garou goes to that next level, how he achieves this new threshold of power. However, at the same time, I have to wonder if that's contrary to the character he is, simply because, again, he's so against bullying. He likes to do things by himself, and he is also, beyond, facing Saitama, he's an enemy of God. He names his moves after God, destroying God and wanting to surpass him. So I have to wonder if that acceptance is going to be against the kind of character he is that we know him to be.
Right. Sure. Those are very good points. And I think to that note that if God tells Garou, hey, I'll grant you power, initially he'll definitely say no. Like, Garou is absolutely not going to take power from God initially, but if during his battle with Saitama and the serious table flip and everything, if he gets pushed so far past his, if he's just battered and beaten and broken and can't win, he may get so frustrated that he finally met an opponent that he can't beat, that he may just be laying on the ground and just say, screw it, give me your power. And at that point, we'll get the real battle.
Yeah, I think that is, that's pretty reasonable, because if Garou just hits this wall, we know that he broke his limiter, same as Saitama, but Saitama is just this indomitable force and immovable object. If he can never go past that, that just shatters his dream. That just ruins everything that he's ever desired, because there will always be Saitama to block his path in a sense. I can see him, if someone realizes they can never achieve their dream without making their deal with the devil in this way, some people would make that deal, and we'll see with Garou, I think.
You bring up a good point that is kind of against core character, because he's only gotten this far through his own determination. He's gotten hit down so many times, but he's gotten up. He's like the ultimate example of self-progress, self-improvement. And that maybe just shows, maybe that'll be a good situation where he reaches such a wall that he has to give in. I think that could be a good moment.
Right, yeah, that could be a super big moment in the manga if like Garou has to like throw away his entire resolve, you know, throw away his pride and you know, would that change his core character at that point? So I think that's a really good opportunity for Murata to like write some awesome story into it. And I kind of feel like it has to happen because there's been so many references to God, and also like with the redrawn chapter with Orochi down in the earth, and there's those hieroglyphics on the wall, and it shows Orochi as like a sacrifice in order to resurrect God, right? Yeah. And Orochi died like right down there, so I think it's very possible that God's quote-unquote resurrection may happen with Garou. But it's also peculiar because the whole God thing, like there's the hieroglyphics on the wall, there's the cubes, God is in some other dimension, but he's also out in space fighting Blast, and there's also like this resurrection one. Like how many gods are there? Is there multiple? I feel like with the redraw of Orochi versus Saitama and the whole resurrection of God thing, I think that Murata had to have redrawn us that and given that to us because God has to come out in this arc somehow, maybe a version of him or something. And the best way to do that is to fuse with Garou at some stage in the battle. But if he does, like, will Blast come back to Earth to like help out?
That was my question. Like, I was thinking about that because we already had him leave. If he just comes back immediately, it's gonna kind of take away from that fire a bit. I think he left because there's the thought that, okay, we have to go help the others. You know, there's more important things to handle. You can handle Sage Centipede. I mean, I've heard of you, King. Does he think that it's just over? I would imagine so. He probably doesn't expect anyone at this stage to accept that power, accept that deal or anything. He may have involved himself because of the cube, because Saitama and them found the cube. He probably wouldn't know everything that God's doing.
But it seems like he does because he transported out Saitama and Flashy Flash, and then they were fighting in the battle, and then God tried to grant Tatsumaki power, and he came back from that cosmic war just to like check on her. It almost seems as if like he knows, like every time God talks to someone, like he gets a ping in his head or something, like he's somehow connected. And so I think it is possible that if God grants Garou power, Blast may show up. And I mean, imagine if Garou transforms like into God, and then we get, you know, Saitama and Blast versus God. But I feel like that has to be like the final battle of the series, right?
That would be insane.
Unless like this is just some baby version of God, and the real God, you know, or the King of the Gods is like out there somewhere, and this is just like a teaser to the final arc. But all this would be amazing, and like this ties into our previous discussion, which you guys can see on the Plot Armor channel, about the pacing of this arc and how Murata is rewriting certain elements. I think that this is what makes it so awesome, is that we kind of know what's going to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen. And Murata can have the freedom here to really like give us something like God versus Saitama and Blast like in this arc, like as a teaser to the final arc, because it seems like that's what this arc, with the exception of really just centering around Garou, it's also been centering around God as well. And I think it would be so cool if he was able to combine, like, you know, those two stories essentially into this one arc and give us just, I mean, God, could you imagine the fan base, dude, if you had Saitama and Blast versus God, like in a few chapters from now? Like,
people would lose their minds. That would be the hottest thing ever. By far.
Peak One Punch Man right there.
Yeah, I mean, Blast just showing up gets crazy views. Blast next to Saitama in a fight is just different.
Right, and every time Blast shows up, I mean, the fandom goes crazy. Like, everybody loves this character. Like, he's a total Chad, and I know he's out there fighting, but we saw him come back just for a moment to check on Tatsumaki. So it seems like he can use his black hole and dimensional capabilities to just teleport around the universe whenever, wherever he wants. We haven't seen him, it doesn't appear to like put any strain on his body that we know of. So assumably he can just do it freely. And if he senses God on Earth, he may, you know, just show back up. But like, how do you top that? You know, if they give us that and then the arc ends and then we go into the next arc,
with the Neo heroes and everything. It just feel like, man, that's quite a title shift right there. Could he give us that much epic and then switch arcs, like, and slow it down again?
It would be like pulling all the tricks out of your bag, you know, especially if it was Saitama, Blast, God, Garou, you know, all in one go.
Yeah. I think you'd have to like really make us interested in whatever's going on with Blast out there. Like, this has to look like just child's play comparatively, if that's going to be the case.
Teaser or something.
Yeah.
Even crazier. That's the point I just thought of about Garou, by the way, accepting his power. Would it be similar to Majin Vegeta? He put his pride aside and took that power, right? Similar?
Yeah, to an extent for sure.
I think it could be something like that. And I feel like with the power boost that everyone gets from taking God's power, like Garou would just be unreal.
Yeah,
but
I mean, look at Homeless Emperor, who went from a normal guy to a dragon level threat. Like, that is insane.
Right. So say God fuses with Garou and Saitama fights him and destroys him or breaks off the God form, and that's the end of the fight. God would definitely take notice of Saitama and be like, who is this guy? What is this guy? He's a threat. And so that could be a major theme of the next arc or the arc after the next one. Murata and One could take this in so many different directions that they want to. So even if they give us this crazy epic fight of the potential of Blast and Saitama versus God now, he could like have that as like a lingering theme throughout, kind of like how God and Blast are throughout this arc in the next one, to keep the audience interested, right? And I mean, I think it's pretty evident. It's gotta be Saitama versus God in the end, right? Like, it's gotta be. So he could just keep teasing us with that sort of stuff. Like, he could have like some piece of a chapter where there's like a meeting of gods or something, and you know, people will go crazy. So he could do, you know, whatever he wants.
There's a lot of routes this can be taken for sure, and I really do think that if nothing else, God will make an attempt to chorus Garou, just because he is such an opportunist. Like, the moment Tatsumaki's down, the moment anyone's down, really, he takes advantage in that way. And it comes down to the ideology, because he accepted Homeless's ideology, talking about, you know, the earth and how man is taking over and doing the wrong things. I definitely think that that's going to be the furtherance of the series. That's what's going to hook all of us and keep us engaged and curious and interested, because even Zombie Man is now privy to the fact that God's involved or whatever that is. So the question is going to arise. That being said, I do think that we have to remember that Saitama can't be seen being, well, Saitama. So for the most part, a lot of figures that aren't aware that he is this powerful will have to be out of play. Even Blast, he doesn't know anything about Saitama. He is also deluded to the fact that King is the end-all be-all for the heroes. I wonder if they would suspend the disbelief so soon and bring Blast into the fray at all.
Well, they could though, but it would be cool. Like, imagine if, you know, God grants Garou power, Saitama defeats him, and then Blast recognizes Saitama's strength, and then Blast wants to recruit Saitama for the Galactic War. You know, that'd be epic as hell.
Do you think? We know that, of course, Garou is against God. He said things that alludes to that, right? I remember the centipede. What's the name? Sage
Centipede?
Yeah, I believe he said something like, "We've come to get the abominable fist that's turned against God," or something like that.
Right.
So it seems like maybe God is aware of Garou's threats towards him, or, you know, disapproval. So do you think, with that, is it even possible God would offer this power to Garou? Would he maybe even see it as a victory, like, I made you cower before me and take my power? What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know the reason for God granting people power. Like, is that helping him escape the pocket dimension that he's sealed in? Is that giving him like more power, more control? Like, what is it doing? I mean, he gives people power, he takes it away, like from Homeless Emperor. He tried to give power to Tatsumaki. Like, why? Like, what does that accomplish? Is he trying to wipe out humanity? Why hasn't he shown up on Earth? There's a lot of questions that we still don't have answered yet.
Definitely. I think that it's remarkable that he's even able to grant these people power. Like, I can understand Homeless Emperor. You know, he said nobody. If you give him power, he's going to be somebody suddenly. But the fact that he can attempt to coerce Tatsumaki, who's already like just so insanely powerful, like, we are dealing with something that is on a whole nother level. And obviously, we saw Blast emerge from his momentary fight against God, trying to resist and hold him back, and he was banged up. You know, we had never seen Blast be in any sort of peril or harm in that way, but there you have it right there.
Yeah, it explained the scratches all over his body and everything, because like when we saw the flashbacks of him, he was clean, but when he came out and met Saitama and Flashy Flash, like he has, you know, busted up gear and everything like that. So he's out there fighting this cosmic war, like as the story goes on. And God is definitely powerful. We know Blast is faster than Flashy Flash with black hole and pocket dimension capabilities, and God knows what else. Presumably super strength as well, because in the flashback with Tatsumaki, there was like a big hole punched through that monster that was coming after her. So if he's taking damage from God, you know, yeah, definitely it's a big threat. And I'm also curious as to who those other heroes are that Blast is fighting with out there. But they also looked kind of evil from that picture, so I don't know what.
Yeah, they look a bit sinister. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, they could be people or aliens that God has granted power to, right? Like, so there could be God, and then just like this army of possessed heroes that are juiced up, you know, Majin army, as you would say. I'm curious as to why, like, if Blast knows how strong King is, why hasn't he tried to recruit him for the war? You know, he said, "I'm not the only one fighting out there," you know, as if King knew what's happening out there in space. King had no idea, but
I wonder about that. I wonder if it's a thing where he feels like, because he knows Tatsumaki's powerful, you know, he could have very well recruited Tatsumaki, but maybe he thinks, you know, I got to leave some people to hold down the fort, kind of thing.
Like, maybe like you said, he feels I can't just bring everyone.
Yeah, you can't recruit the whole brigade because they, you know, they have to handle these smaller threats, and maybe they're just not strong enough. Maybe he doesn't perceive them to be ready for that kind of fight.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, what if God is so powerful that he feels like Tatsumaki and King are just not strong enough to even help out in that fight?
That takes the power scaling of this series is just ridiculous. Like, I'm curious how all of this is going to be displayed, like, to differentiate the magnitudes of power at this point, because we had Garou handling things in milliseconds chapters ago. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Murata and One handle all this.
Murata's the one that can pull it off, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, we're going to be planet smashing real soon.
Planet smashing.
Yeah, probably, man. Maybe we'll get to DBZ level. We'll see. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining. Definitely a super interesting topic. I loved the call. It was nice meeting you. Go check out the Plot Armor channel, and we'll see you guys soon for some more One Punch Man videos.
Thanks for having us.